1979, and their 1881 specimen was the first showing of these new bodies. Eventually, in 1886, the United States Type Founders Association adopted the point system. This photo shows old line gauges up at the top with the old names for the type sizes, and below them the new point size gauges. Because McKellar Smith & Jordan was the largest foundry with more type in use than any other, its pica was chosen as the standard. An important advance in typecasting came in 1888 when Henry Barth of the Cleveland Type Foundry patented his automatic casting machine. This machine eventually superseded the Bruce caster and did most of the typecasting into the middle of the 20th century. In fact, there are several still in use today, and I think this one is at the Dale Hill, if I'm not mistaken. The Barth caster performs many of the finishing operations on cast type, which previously had to be performed by hand. It breaks off the jet, plows the groove between the feet of the type, and rubs down portions of the type. Gone are the boys and women who have been used in the past to break off the jets and rub the type. But another and more pretentious idea is in the works, the idea of a machine with a keyboard to set type. At first, compositors ridiculed the thought that a machine could execute the complex skills that they had perfected in the long years from apprenticeship to journeyman. But from the 1860s on, scores of machines to set type were invented here and in Europe. While many remained only ideas in paper, others were manufactured and sold for daily use in busy printing offices. This is a sample of some of the typesetting done on the machine shown at the bottom of it. They all used normal foundry type, usually with special nicks on the sides to guide them through the machine. Some of you may recall that Mark Twain, who had been a printer in his youth, was involved with one of these, the Page compositor. He was astonished that a machine could actually set type and at a rate 4 times faster than a human. He wrote, quote, "All the other inventions of the human brain sink pretty nearly into commonplaces, contrasted with this awful mechanical miracle. Telephones, telegraphs, locomotives, cotton gins, sewing machines, Babbage calculators, jacquard looms, perfecting presses, Arkwright's frames, all mere toys, simplicities. The Page compositor marches alone and far in the lead of human inventions," unquote. Alas, as an investor, he lost $190,000 because the machine, with its 18,000 parts, was incredibly complicated and could never run for very long without mechanical difficulties. The sole remaining Page compositor, only 2 were ever built, was bought by the Mercantile Linotype Company in 1897 and donated to the Mark Twain House in Hartford in 1964. But several other of these inventions worked reliably and seemed to indicate the future of machine typecasting. But then along came Mercantile's Linotype machine, unveiled in 1883 at the New York Herald. It was fundamentally different from the others. It did not use foundry type, but rather assembled matrices and then cast its own type from molten type metal. Thus it had a never-ending supply of new, unworn type. This concept swept away all the other machines, and in severing the connection between the newspapers and the type foundries, it did away for the need for large quantities of foundry text type. This is a sample of some early linotype setting. The foundries were losing their major customers. A great upheaval in the printing industry was underway. This is the first book to have its type set on the Linotype in 1887. Business conditions were already difficult amongst the type founders. Competition was fierce, price wars frequently erupted between the foundries to the point where many were struggling to make a profit. The advent of the Linotype made things even worse for the founders. Finally, after much discussion and negotiation, in 1892, 23 of the leading foundries joined together in a trust called the American Type Founders Company. A few of these foundries became branches of the new company and continued to cast type for a few years. It must have been very hard for the managers of the old foundries, which had been in business for many decades, to lose their independence. At first, the new company seemed almost embarrassed by the consolidation, and of course their customers were worried that the near monopoly would raise prices. The first specimen books issued after 1892 barely mentioned the name of the American Type Founders Company. The specimen at the right was issued 4 years after Martyr Loose became part of the American Type Founders Company, but you couldn't tell it from the cover of the book. But eventually, all casting was consolidated in one factory in New Jersey, and the new company's name began to be advertised and shown on its specimen books. The century-long run of the great American type foundries was over. Here we see the Bruce Foundry in New York, which we have seen in a mid-century daguerreotype, now in the process of being torn down, taken off the top floor. A few holdouts remained independent, but over the years, one by one, they became part of ATF. In 1896, McKellar, Smith, and Jordan published an impressive tribute to their foundry called 100 Years, although, in fact, by 1896, they had for 4 years been submerged into the American Type Founders Company. And at about the same time, there was a great change in taste. In England, William Morris, appalled at the decline in printing standards, started the Kelmscott Press. His Golden, Chaucer, and Troy typefaces caught the eye of book artists and of the public. When the visual novelty of Morris's elaborate mock medieval pages faded away, what remained was the simplicity and strength of his types. This is Morris's Golden type. In 1890, James W. Finney of the Dickinson Type Foundry in Boston had tried to license the Golden type, and on Morris's refusal, in 1891 produced a close copy, which he called Jensen Old Style. The following year, the Dickinson Foundry, which produced Jensen Old Style, became part of American Type Founders Company, and Jensen Old Style became one of its best-selling types. The story was repeated with a twist a few years later, when ATF wrote to Morris in an attempt to license his Troy and Chaucer faces. These Troy and Chaucer are different sizes of the same basic face. Apparently, Morris wrote back that they could, quote, go to the devil, unquote, or words to that effect. And so when ATF copied the faces in 1896, they called it satanic. The type specimen books that ATF issued stopped showing most of the ornamented types of the 19th century. Their time had passed. Everything had changed in the last decade of the century. Most of the foundries were gone, text type was now set by machine, and designers, men like Updike and Bruce Rogers, had displaced the old anonymous compositor. The 20th century had arrived. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the speakers, Stephen, Brian, and everyone, and my partners in crime, Karen Quantione and Amanda, who, as you know, had to go to a wedding. And but particularly, I'd like you all to join me in thanking Barbara Henry, who organized this spectacular.
Thank you.
Show your appreciation to Barbara by going out and having some brownies in her honor.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of crammed into 45. I think it was 45 minutes.
It was 45 minutes exactly.
How about that?
We're up to 46 minutes, 55 seconds
I
now.
cut 2 paragraphs last night, so that's it.
Good work.
Very well done.
Wanted to live on at some point.
Actually, a friend of mine was telling me that he's going to...
I'm going to give you even better.
I use mine.
I'm going to give
where he's gonna put it, but he wants to do it, and he's an AVICAR's professional. Sorry? Slideshare. I'll have to look that up.
People put their PowerPoint
Oh, really?
Slide share?
slideshare.
I'll have to look it up. I'm interested. The
Video?
first time I gave this talk, which was back in April at Harvard, I had 144 Ektachrome slides in 2 carousels, and then after I gave that, I decided it was time to switch to PowerPoint. So I'm making some progress.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I put parts of it on YouTube?
No,
Good.
really?
I don't know, you know, they limit it to 10 minutes, so we'll see how many splices I could get. And I got the audience's heads in the way.
Oh,
It's terrible footage, but, you know, hey, it's
Hey, what-
somebody, your voice maybe will be all right, you never know.
yeah, I hope so. I hope I was not talking too fast.
You were very good.
I tried to keep it to 45 minutes, and I knew, okay, good.
I would have walked out otherwise.
Well, look.